It is simply not necessary for us to gain large amounts of body fat on a bulk. Hey, everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys and gals about this a little bit today. And, this is coming from an observation of both years of experience as a coach as well as keeping up with, the different scientific literature. Really, the old concept of dirty bulking, it really and truly is out. Meaning there is no reason for a man to even hit 20% or higher body fat in order to maximize muscle growth. Now, am I saying we can do all purely lean gains all the time? Probably not, 100% and make great gains. We can definitely focus on recomposition. We can definitely focus on the leanest gains possible. And that may not give you the most size, right? It may not give you the most size in any given time period, but it'll also mean you probably don't have to cut either. Now, that being said, when I discuss this topic, I want to be clear. I am not talking about people who are contest shredded, staying that lean and bulking. In other words, if you're 6 or 7 or 8% body fat, you're probably not going to be able to stay there and gain significant muscle mass, right? You probably are going to have to go up to 10% or higher body fat. Let's be realistic about that. Okay, so for contest people who compete in bodybuilding or in men's physique, some of this may not really be true to the same extent, obviously. So we do need a context for that. But when we're talking about guys who just get lean enough to have really nice abs, you may not need to lose those on a bulk. You really might not need to. Because what I'm going to say is you may not, if you're down at 10%, you may not ever need to go above about 12% body fat or 13 or something like that, even to maximize muscle growth. Because here's what we've observed with it over the years. Yes, and I've seen people who've bulked up really fat and then cut down and did amazingly well afterwards, but I also have to look at that and go, would they have just been better staying leaner and having a shorter cut? Because that was the thing that was interesting, is that when we saw a study on bulking, pretty good study done in the last year, it showed that an extremely small surplus, extremely small, like a 3% calorie surplus, caused just as much muscle growth as a 10%. But it caused a tremendously less fat gain. And I mean, haven't we all as coaches found this to be true? Right? I have had clients who made yearly gains who only did 10-pound bulks every year and then did a small cut. How small of a surplus is that? They're gaining 1 pound a month. And these are advanced lifters. Right? I'm talking guys, with like 500 squats and things. In fact, one of my guys did that. We did 3 years of bulking and cutting like that and took him from a 440 up to a 505 squat. And he was a power lifter. But that's exactly what we did. He gained 1 pound, an average of 1 pound a month. That's an enormously small surplus. And when you look at that, you go, okay, you figure maybe 50% of that, at most 50% of that was body fat. Some of it's going to be a little bit of water and other stuff. But that is an extremely small calorie surplus. And then people hear that, though, and they'll say, okay, but it's too hard to do a surplus that small. Not really, because if the scale is only barely moving up, that is right about there. And in other words, in worst case, let's say you undershoot it, you'll just recomposition a little amount that month. But even then, let's say you take it up a hair higher. Even 2 pounds a month. 2 pounds a month is probably the most I would ever recommend anybody bulk. Okay, but even a pound, so that's about a kilogram, just under a kilo. So, about half a kilogram, about 1 pound a month. I think for most guys, it really and truly is going to be mostly lean gains. But even then, there's going to be some fat accumulated. But if we go off of that data, we don't need very much of a surplus to maximize muscle growth. There's just no extra muscle gain seen when we gain faster. Strength goes up because leverages and stuff improve. Okay? Leverages improve, maybe neural drive from the recovery. But The muscle growth just simply isn't there according to the data. And again, let me make that note. I have seen guys do this as clients who are drug-free lifters. Gain 10 pounds over the course of a year, do a small cut, and go back down to the original weight. What's the end result? They end up at the same weight with about 1% difference in body fat. Now, for someone who says, well, that's not a lot, well, when you've been training more than 5 years hard, it is. Like, for example, a perfect example of the guy I'm using who did this for 3 years, he'd already done multiple powerlifting meets. He had a 440 squat at like 180 pounds or 175. Okay? He had already a 500 deadlift. We took him from about a 290 bench up to a 325. So really, when you look at that, that is a lot of progress for an advanced drug-free lifter over the course of 3 years to end up in the same weight class with about 3 to 4% less body fat is significant. When you start looking at those gains charts, saying, oh, at this point, you're probably only going to gain about 2 pounds of muscle a year. Well, in this case, we gained the 2 pounds of muscle every year, but we never gained more than 10 pounds of body weight in a year. And in that time, we put 65 pounds on his squat, we put 35 pounds on his bench, and around 80 pounds on his deadlift. While the bulk and cuts each year were small enough that we stayed in the weight class all the time, and we ended up around the same weight, about 170s, low 170s every time he cut, and we just did 10 pounds. We had a 10-pound window. Worked phenomenally well. So what I'm saying is my experiences as a coach very much match what this data is. In other words, you don't have to gain significant amounts of fat. If you want to maximize, you might gain a pound of fat here and there. But you really shouldn't be gaining more than about 5 or 6 pounds of body fat on a bulk at all, over a long bulk. Anything beyond that, you're not. It's all just fat gain. You're probably not making lean gains anymore. So yes, we can run extremely small surpluses and literally put on 10 pounds a year. Okay, 10 pounds over the course of a year or less. Someone could basically recomp and just put on 2 or 3 pounds average a year. They will stay very, very lean if they're already pretty lean. If they're already 11, 12% body fat, they're going to stay there. They're not going to get really fatter. And that's perfectly reasonable. The data supports it. My experience as a coach supports it. The only problem with people is the lack of patience, right? Because they're like, it's taking me forever to put 5 pounds on my bench and 10 pounds on my squat numbers. Well, yeah, because you're only gaining, a couple pounds of muscle a year, but you're also never gaining fat. Okay? It works really well, and you're probably not really going to gain significantly faster than that. Even if you bulk quicker, you would just be accumulating fat quicker. That's what happens when you're no longer a noob. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.